Okay, looks like everybody's ready to go. Thanks for being on time. Okay, I will call the meeting of the Rules/Guidance Committee to order. Let me see here. Everybody's in attendance, right? Dawn, we're missing Dawn.
Yeah, I don't think she's going to be here.
Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and get started then. So all we have on our agenda is to continue working on our policies and procedures. So just a quick review of what we talked about last time. I mean, it's pretty.
Sorry, actually, Mahina, can you go back for the record and just have everybody introduce themselves and whether or not somebody's in the room?
Sorry, of course. Okay, I'll start. Mahina Tudor, Chair of the Rules Committee. Nobody is in the room with me. Onauna, if you want to go next.
Onauna Thone, member of the Rules Committee. Nobody's in the room with me.
How about Rachel, you want to go?
Sure. I'm Rachel Sprague, a member of the Rules Committee, and no one is in the room with me.
And Ron?
Ron Terry, member solo.
All right. And Makala.
Yeah, I was saying earlier, we need more creative ways to say I'm all alone. Makala Kalmoana on Kauai, flying solo.
There you go.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Okay, so the draft that we got going, and sorry I didn't have time to work on it to get it to such a stage where I could share with everybody before the meeting. So last time we had talked a little bit about narrowing the purpose of our committee. We also talked a little bit about teasing out the provision on conducting community outreach so that we can narrow that as well. And then we talked about coming up with a process to work directly with OPSD staff to articulate and manage the process of formulating guidance, specifically adding in content about working with less and incorporating all his institutional knowledge and guidance. And yeah, talking about whether there's a specific way to elicit comments from less them. And then we also talked about environmental justice and how, large of a role we wanted that to play in our guidance. And then lastly, how to handle or how to articulate our process for answering questions from the public about the EAC. So those are kind of what we talked about last time in terms of what I've worked on since. I've incorporated Onauna's mana'o about narrowing our scope of community outreach. I mean, just including a provision that says conduct community outreach to engage in meaningful consultation with stakeholders, where necessary or as determined at our discretion. So I think last time we all agreed that that was an appropriate thing to add. For number 3, about working with OPSD to articulate and manage the process of formulating appropriate guidance. I haven't talked to Les about that yet, so that's something I still need to do. And that's probably going to take a bit more time to figure that out.
Mahina, I think you talked to Les as you planned, but I also think because Scott is back where he is and has had extensive experience with outreach, and also he's the guy that kept promising me we're going to do guidance. I'm sure he's given it more than a little thought, and I would like to have him engaged as well. It doesn't need to be by me, certainly, but I'd like him to know that we have gotten this far to catch him up very specifically. Mm-hmm. In addition to being at a meeting, I mean, having a conversation with him directly about this aspect and component because of his experience. And I think that given his current position, he will need alignment between public interactions with OPSD and the EAC. They will need to, I'm not saying mimic each other, but they will need to align so that people aren't getting conflicting messages and processes.
That's a great point, Makala.
I
Yeah.
don't know how OPSD works. If somebody from, you know, wherever just calls them on the phone and has how does that get routed? How does that get addressed? What is there? I just don't know. What is their process? And what role might or might not the EAC have in that? I just
Okay,
don't know.
I can respond to that. The what happens is if someone calls in to OPSD with a specific question or problem, one of us, myself, Jen, or Tom, will field the call and get back to the person, yeah, with whatever necessary information they need, yeah, or we might have to refer them to another agency. But right now, because there are only 3 of us, yeah, and it's one of the 3 of us that gets back to them, and we keep a record of that in our emails. When we reply to the person, we kind of basically substantively give what the advice was, so that we won't conflict in the future if we give similar advice to other people too. So we have a data bank of advice in our emails, yeah. So I don't know if that answers your question, Makala, but we would welcome any suggestions if we could improve the process, yeah.
Yeah, that answers what EAC does. I'm looking for some sort of alignment with what OP itself might do. If somebody just calls OP with a how does OP staff handle? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's not well, I'm just looking for alignment with you guys, with the 3 of you.
Well, what's been happening at OP is that when the public calls OP, there's what they call a planner of the month, yeah? So
Poor soul.
one planner has a month to kind of field, calls from the public and trying to contact the right people. So if it's an EIS, EA question, generally they'll, contact us, and that's happened already. Or they may contact the CZM program, because sometimes the CZM program gets into like special management area permits and more specific stuff than what the EA ERP program does, yeah. So that's how they work it. The planner of the month is the public face of OPSD, yeah. And
Thank you. That's really helpful. I had no idea. Poor soul.
yeah.
Okay. Whole month, huh? Wow.
Yeah, 1 whole month.
Yeah, that's actually a good idea. I think people can kind of handle it for a month, and then they can focus on other duties.
I would think.
Yeah. Mahina, I was actually going to suggest, and unless if you're willing to, depending on what the agenda is and what else you need feedback on, Mahina, today, maybe we just start the conversation with Les now on, what should be the process for doing guidance. And, Les, I know traditionally, I don't know, but I believe, really it was OEQC staff, so now ERP staff, who would take the lead on doing guidance. And in some cases, I believe the council would help, right? So yeah, I don't know if you can talk a little bit about the typical process, and then if you see a way for, you've heard us how many meetings now for how many years saying, we do want to get involved with helping to do some guidance and kind of more in specific areas that came out of comments from the public, like, the cultural assessments and whatnot. Yeah, I think maybe that would be helpful for us in getting a policy together, because, at the end of the day, I think, to the extent the council can offer ERP staff support, that would be great. But ERP staff certainly, in my mind, does need to be involved since you folks are there more on a more permanent basis than council members are, right?
Yeah,
So I
right,
think that's
right.
the way that it would be done.
Yeah, well, I can start by saying that, yeah, generally guidance, there's a whole universe of guidance that we can offer. We generally provide guidance to two types of people: the general citizens who are really not that familiar with the details of the EAEIS process, like they want to know how long the comment period is, or, what they should say in a comment letter, and we give them guidance on, basically telling them that, it's the environmental impacts, that you're looking at. So how will the proposed action impact their environment or the environment of the program or project that they're looking at, And the next type of guidance that we give is more detailed technical guidance to the people that basically prepare EAs and EISs like Ron and Rachel, and so, in that kind of situation, we're dealing, almost exclusively with the rules, in the statute, to, provide them with guidance. Some of it may have to do with discretionary things such as how do they respond to public comments, and we tell them, as frank as possible, to be upfront and honest with them, and to basically, find a factual basis for their findings, in the environmental impacts, So that's pretty much where we kind of go with them. So we have two basic types of audiences, like the general citizenry and the people that actually do EAs, EISs for a living. And we also have people that basically don't have any idea what we do, but they want to somehow get involved with the process, and I don't know how to categorize these people. Some of them are misinformed, and they have these ideas that they think are true, but they're not necessarily true, like some of them are climate deniers, and we've dealt with people like that, saying that there's no such thing as global warming and stuff. So, we try our best to reach out to these people to try to make them feel like they're somehow a part of the process,
No, that's helpful. Thanks, Les. I don't know how other folks feel about that. I think when we're envisioning guidance, we are kind of envisioning more the technical guidance, the how to get through the process. I guess that's kind of what's helpful in a practical standpoint. I don't know how are other folks feeling on that.
That was what came up when we did the statewide public process for the rules. That's what came up, was how do we participate? How does the member of the public learn, which Les just described, but also participate, and then guidance. I think too, I would like to see something from this document that helps the other committees, to the extent that they're doing outreach and so forth, give them a path for obtaining and publishing, accurate, good information about EAC and what.
too much flack.
Whoa. Okay, I have a delivery in about 10 minutes, so that wasn't on my end.
Okay,
I have a delivery in about 10 minutes, so if I step away, that's why I'm not dissing you.
Okay.
We lost our chat capacity, so I couldn't secretly tell you all.
I think we still have a chat, you know, in this, but
Not,
I'm-
it's not, it wasn't an option in the board for me today. It
Oh.
was earlier, but in another Zoom it was, but in this Zoom, it's not.
no, but I think we're trying to avoid using the chat
Yeah.
function. Supposedly
Oh, okay.
it's a sunshine issue, right?
Right.
Which we
Oh,
wanted
I
us
see.
to take a look
Okay,
at
okay.
because,
Right.
yeah, I know there are other boards and commissions who discourage use of the chat because of the sunshine issues. So,
Oh, okay, got it.
yeah.
Okay. And you know, the other thing too, in the guidance document, we have a draft guidance document that Scott and Tom and myself and Jen prepared, but it hasn't been updated yet because we basically have different sections of the document, talking about EAs, EISs, and we're trying to, you know, one of the things that we did, but when Scott left, everything kind of fell apart. And what happened was, you know, we were trying to find specific issues to discuss under each of those issues, like, you know, that might arise during the EIS process that people need to be aware of. Yeah. Like, for example, if you're going to prepare a final EIS, you know, you should make sure that, you know, you meet the content requirements early on in the process, because what will happen is if you don't meet the content requirements by the time it gets to acceptance, you might get stuck with another round of public comments again to make up for the deficiencies in the EIS, yeah, because you're gonna have to issue a second draft of the document, in other words. So things of that sort, yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you, Les. Maybe, I mean, would it be helpful for us to take a look at that document, even though I know it needs to get updated?
Yeah, I can, let me ask Scott, you know, I'm sure that, you know, he can, I'm sure he'll be open to it, you know, because we're gonna have to start somewhere again, yeah. So, yeah, let me get back to you on that, okay? Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Les. And on that point, I mean, maybe it would just be helpful for me to set up a meeting with Scott.
Yeah, that'd be good. Uh-huh.
Now, I think that's very important, Mahina, but make sure you gathered all of our stuff first so that you know, because he's going to be slammed, because the other committees are wanting to meet with him as well. And I'm sure, you know, we're not going to be the biggest pebble in his pool right now. So let's make sure that we're asked, you know, you know what you need to meet with him about first. I will tell you the reason I'm on this is because, you know, I really wanted it more more legal and more required that you know, the public is able to participate verbally and that stuff didn't have to be in writing, and you remember all those discussions. So that was part of it, was the cultural issue of, you know, if Uncle wants to stand up and talk about the price of spam, you listen to Uncle talk about the price of spam and then you just get past it. And that's what we do. That's respect. And hopefully we don't have too much of that, but I want everybody's right to share verbally or in melee or in Oli. I don't care how they do it. And be recorded. And we do have that now, that the digital recording will be produced and will be preserved. But for me, that's the kind of thing that's slipping by the by as we think we're advancing technologically. We're leaving some of that juice behind.
That's a good point. Okay, yeah, I think first things first, I'll meet with Scott. I think that'll be really helpful for giving us guidance for our guidance. Going back to kind of what I've done since our last meeting, I believe it was numbers, number 4 in our draft policies and procedures in terms of environmental justice. Ron had suggested that our guidance could be really helpful in that respect, to look at the federal law and any state laws really carefully and to reference those if we do want to incorporate EJ. So I took a look. I mean, we have the EPA's definition, the executive order back in the 90s, and then EPA has their EJ 2020 action agenda. But I don't know about you folks, but I couldn't find anything in Hawaii specifically that explicitly references environmental justice.
I was pretty sure there was an environmental justice law. I may be mistaken, but I thought we had one.
I know we've
I don't know how to
had,
find it.
no, we might, I hope we do.
Didn't Sade send us that EJ link when we talked to her?
Yeah, she was trying to get a bill through and I checked the
She
capital. I
sent
mean,
like a working paper or something. Like a pamphlet
yeah, there's
that had information. I mean, I unfortunately didn't have time to take a look at it.
yeah, I know we have the old guidance. We have, oh, she was introducing a reso to declare races as a public
Right,
health
but
crisis.
it wasn't the reso. There was like a white paper on it or something that she forwarded.
You know, this is a problem because this is why we have a cast of characters, do we ever, in Hanalei, that have been proposing a program, a state program similar to something that's going on in Australia called Rights of Nature. And they want to give the river rights of its own. And I have objected and balked and blocked and done everything I can, because when I consult with our law here, they say, you know, oh, that's in our constitution. We have a great constitution. They had pukas in theirs they needed to address. We don't. It's all there. So let's make sure we're not stepping on our toes here.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I'm just going through those.
Last thing I need is for my river to have rights of its own. Thank you very much. I love my river, but please.
No, so I just found, okay, I found the link she sent us. 1 second. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a bigger question on the environmental justice of how would it really fit in here again with, I'm not versed in the issue, but I kind of feel like that's more on the policy than the procedure side, right? In terms of, you know, chapter 343 again is procedural, right? And really the rules that we deal with are kind of procedural in nature in terms of, you know, this is what you have to do to go through the process. But not to say we can't look at the policy side of things, but I think we have to make sure that we kind of take a better, more careful look at that.
I would agree. And if that's a subject that needs to be looked at, somebody please do that, because I don't want to be surprised from behind.
Mm-hmm.
To me, environmental justice is a federal thing. For example, where you put the dump can't be the same place you put the power plant and that kind of thing environmentally. Yeah, Ron, I mean, it's an issue of not piling on to a poor community, and there's a matrix for that. There's parameters for that. Some of it is economic, some of it is, you know, available services and all that stuff. You just don't get to dump everything on the poor community that doesn't have a voice.
Well, yeah, and you also coordinate, you communicate with them. That's a big component of it, is they're not like, you know, birds and insects, you know, they can talk back and make their own judgments and decisions. So you need to involve minority and low-income communities in any decisions that affect them, especially if there's the potential for proportionally, adverse impacts.
Right. So that's the bigger overarching subject of environmental justice as it's federally applied and so forth. But how it relates to us, I'm unclear.
God, I swear there's something, but I can't find it.
Yeah, the link, hey, Les, I kind of think this was a link that was hosted on the old SharePoint, because when I click on it, I'm now getting, it says OEQC, but and this is a January 26th email from Sharday to me and you, Mahina, that link. And it goes to OEQC, the SharePoint site, and I'm getting an error message. So I think it used to be hosted on your site.
Probably so, yeah.
But when I look on the news site, I can't find anything about the Hawaii Environmental Justice Report.
Yeah, let me take a look.
So, I mean, maybe that can be homework if we find it, is to kind of read that. I'm looking on the websites now, and it looks like DOH there's a new draft environmental justice plan 2015 to 2020.
Yeah.
It's only 2 pages. I don't think this is the one.
There's SB 1277 from the 2021 legislature. I don't know if it passed though.
I don't think it did, because I know OHA wanted
that
to
was the-
propose something, and we, in that meeting with them, I think we reported on this previously, we had some reservations about the particular bill that they were proposing.
Right, it was about mapping, I think, and
Yeah, I think there was some stuff, and then I think there was some, gosh, I can't recall the full nature of our comments, that being, now a year ago. But I think there were some, I may have had some concerns. Oh, I know what it was. They wanted to add socioeconomic disparities to the definition of significant.
oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I did have some concerns with how they would measure that, right? And so how would you even determine there's a significant effect in terms of, I think the way what they defined it was a relationship between race, socioeconomic status, and health. Socioeconomic status is measured by income, educational achievement, and occupation. So I just didn't know how a consultant in an EIS would go and get that kind of information from people without kind of going, I guess, door to door in the community. With census data and stuff is not up to date and whatnot. So I think the nature, if I recall, our comments were really that, we were interested in hearing how they were going to measure these things, but then I don't think there was subsequent discussion. And I know Sharday herself, she's like, oh, but she wasn't sure how that was going to work. Nevertheless, I think OHA went ahead and, proposed the bill. And I believe we did draft testimony kind of, of the same, raising kind of the same issues. I don't believe it passed.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I recall that now.
Right. So, but in any event, going to the Hawaii Environmental Justice Report, I think she did forward us a link. I cannot find it now, and I'm trying to Google, but
So
I checked the website. I can't find anything with respect to environmental justice on our website. So either,
that report is actually, that's the one I suggested to Sharday that she look at.
oh, okay, you sent it. Okay. You have a copy?
so Scott does OEQC did it back in the 90s or early 2000s. And I know from when I first got on the EAC, Scott wanted to update that guidance after the rules. So I'm not sure how he feels about that now, but I think it'd be, when I meet with him, it'd be worth discussing to see where he thinks those recommendations stand today.
Yeah,
But yeah, that was an OEQC report.
okay, if we can get, I mean, I guess if that's something you want the rules committee to look at in terms of guidance, if you can also ask for a copy of that, since it's not at that link anymore, because I'll speak for myself. I know that word and that term is thrown out a lot, but I probably need to educate myself more on, what the scope of the concept is and how I guess it would relate to the work that we're doing before we make decisions on incorporating it into our own guidance and whatnot.
Definitely. Yeah, I know I need to do more digging too. All I could find in terms of like Hawaii environmental justice stuff is that DOH kind of supports the EPA's policy and all of that. But yeah, I need to do more digging to see if there's anything more concrete.
Yeah, in practice for me, I always address this issue in every 343 document.
Mhm.
And not so much, I mean, I guess I don't cite any Hawaii laws or policies. And of course, the real stuff is federal, but it's just sort of best practices in social impact analysis. So, I don't have to cite laws and regulations for all impact analyses that I do,
Mhm.
if they're best practices.
Right. Yeah, that's super helpful. I think I'll figure out maybe some of the specifics with Scott, and then we can collectively decide how big of a role we want EJ to play in our guidance.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I will say that it's difficult to do because the data are lacking.
Mm,
It's hard to find, because a lot of the especially if we're in an EA, but even for most EISs, the scale of the impacts is geographically usually fairly small, and the data are not there. If you want to talk about the state as a whole, it's pretty easy to get good data. If you want to talk about some community somewhere, not so great. You can get estimates through the American Community Survey, but the error bars on those estimates are massive. And any statistician looking at it just kind of has to go tisk tisk. This is not good.
oh, okay. I'm not super familiar with the EJ screen. Is that
Yeah, I've used it. It's
helpful?
not that useful. I mean, it's precise but not accurate. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Okay, that's good to know. Okay, awesome. Does anybody have anything else to add on this topic? No. Okay, other than that, yeah, our last thing that we talked about from our previous meeting was the last subsection in our draft policies and procedures, which was answering questions from the public about the EAC. And we kind of already talked about that, like it changes with who's asking and what they want to know. At our last meeting, Maka'ala posted a question of whether we should be reaching out to agencies to ask how we can help them. I don't know if anybody's thought more about that and whether that's appropriate in our guidance, or whether we even need to say anything about that. I don't know.
I mean, no, I don't think so personally. And maybe this is something to put in or raise to Scott. I think most agencies stay in their lane, right? Because they have to by law. That's their statutory mandate. And so if they need assistance, they'll kind of reach out on specific things. I don't know if we were to go to agencies with kind of that open-ended question. When we did this for the annual report, right, they said they need more staff and they need more money, and we can't do any of that for them. And that's probably true across the board. But in terms of if there's specific training that we can offer to them, I mean, that's something we could do, right? Training and providing guidance on specific issues. So I kind of think that would be the more appropriate way for us as the council to interact with them. That may be different for what ERP does as a state agency. I don't know if others have thoughts on that.
Makes sense.
Agreed. Yeah, I was thinking about that annual report process and sounds like a lot of work. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that, Onana. Other than that, that's kind of it. Sorry, I haven't had a chance to work more on this over the holidays. I will set up a meeting with Scott and try to get some guidance on our guidance. And then, yeah, I'm not sure, I guess, depending on if Scott has time to meet. I guess we can determine from there whether we need a meeting next month.
Yeah, and Scott said he should be able to join our meeting today at about 1:30. So, maybe you can ask if he can, set up a timer. If not, shoot him an email separately. But yeah, I mean, if not, I don't know if you have a draft that'll be ready for the Rules Committee to review, Mahina, next month, regardless of whether you meet with Scott. That might be something we can start working on in terms of, drafting actual language.
Yeah. I think meeting with Scott would be really helpful in coming up with some of the substance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. That's kind of all that I have. Anybody have anything else? We'll take a little break for the next meeting. Okay, awesome. Thank you, everyone. We are adjourned.
Thank
Awesome,
you.
thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.